Hey everybody, this is Cam Garrity. Welcome to the very first episode of This Should Have Been a Phone Call. Thank you so much for joining me on this first episode. I myself have been a podcaster for almost 4 years now on a show that I make with my pal and a future guest on this show, Adam Krutinger, called Puppeteers, which is where we interview puppet artists from all over the world. And I've fallen in love with this medium and getting to talk to people. So I wanted to create this show to talk to people outside of the world of puppetry in an intimate sort of long form format too. So we'll be dropping episodes every week. But for today's premiere, I thought I'd gift you with the first 3 episodes so you could kind of get a feel for what we're going for. I'm talking to Bob Runkle, who has hosted the DJ Bob Show for nearly 12 years, as well as Adrian Birmingham, who's the National Program Director for Jane Goodall's Roots and Shoots. So those podcasts already exist. They are available for you to listen to right now. So please go check those out as soon as you're done listening to this conversation that I'm having with one of my favorite people on TikTok, the one and only Sam Dockser. Sam is a content creator with nearly 300,000 followers across social media, where she performs lip syncs, does original sketches, has a food blog, hosts a book club, and so much more. Of course, she's also a working actress, appearing in all kinds of projects, including the new Mindy Kaling show on HBO Max, The Sex Lives of College Girls. We talk a lot about the highs and the lows of being a content creator, the toll that making uplifting, joy-filled art can have on a person, and the kinds of film and television that she'd most like to be a part of. She also recommends a bunch of great television shows, some of which I had not seen before we talked, but since we did, have become some of my all-time favorites. So make sure you listen for those. You will not be disappointed. This should have been a phone call with my TV whisperer, Samantha Dockser. Congrats on the Middle of Nowhere premiere. That looked really exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really fun. We actually, we filmed it back in December of 2019.
Okay. So a lifetime ago.
Yeah, truly. So I think the idea would have been, in a world without COVID, that we would have just continued making the series, but that was not how things went. And so we've got the first 2 episodes made, and it was just like really exciting to get to see it on the big screen and be reunited with the cast. And the hope is that now we get to make the rest of the episodes.
Right. Is there a plan for how it would be distributed, or are you guys still trying to find someone?
I guess when this comes out, there's a chance, hopefully, that it will have been picked up by some streaming platform or a bigger producer. That's sort of the hope. At this point, it's very indie, so I think we're still trying to find a home for it.
And what's the show about? I know it seems like it's a bit of a family show. You've got some brothers and parents on it, but what's it about?
Yes. So the main story is about Lisa, who is 50 years old, just going through a divorce, just lost her job. Sort of like her entire life is up in the air. She feels like she's in the middle of nowhere. And it's about her, like, sort of piecing the mess of her life back together. And I play her niece. It's really about, like, her extended family, and it flashes back to her time growing up. So I'm one of her brother's children on the show, and we get to see what it was like for her growing up and then what it's like for the new generation growing up as well. And it's super relatable. I had seen it before, and it's just really moving to the point where I literally cried in the theater at the premiere watching it. Not my scenes at all. Like, Elena Wall, who plays Lisa, is just so terrific, and the actors who play her parents are amazing. Yeah, I think middle age or not, we can all relate right now to just life feeling like it's totally up in the air. And yeah, that's the hope, that people will see it and see themselves and see their families.
I love that. And, I'm sure, regardless of what the project was, you would have had like a wonderful point of pride just because it was something that you and a team of people that worked on and accomplished, and like you got the job done. And it's extra rewarding and satisfying when it's something that you actually enjoy watching too. Because I'm sure I do some work as an actor and mostly as a puppeteer, and sometimes you end up in things that's like, oh, I'd rather not anybody know that I had a part in this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I fortunately, off the top of my head, can't think of a ton of projects I've been part of like that, but there are certainly a few where I'm like, it's okay actually if no one ever sees this. But this one I would love for people to see. I'm very proud to be part of it.
What kind of stuff do you enjoy watching? Just at the very least, based on the stand-up that you do in your TikTok videos, like the stuff you're lip syncing to. I feel like I have a decent taste of at least what your comedy preferences are, but what kind of shows do you like to watch in general?
So many. I watch comedies and dramas. Mostly comedies, though. Right now, my favorite shows that are airing are The Other Two and What We Do in Shadows and watching Ted Lasso. I watched for the very first time The Sopranos during lockdown last year. I had never seen it, and now I'm very glad that I have. I'm excited for Succession to come back. So yeah, my taste is like a little all over the board, but if it's good TV, I'll watch it.
Yeah. I feel like that's the benefit of like the streaming platforms, is the way that like I definitely have gotten into stuff that I never would have even thought to like channel surf over to. And now it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to watch 7 seasons of a chem teacher turned meth dealer. Like, yeah, let's go for it.
Right. Although Breaking Bad was one that I wanted to love because obviously it's like one of the best television shows of all time and everybody loved it and I just could not get into it. Maybe someday I'll try again.
Yeah. No, it was more gory than I ever thought that I would have even been able to tolerate for a show. I feel like I stuck through it just because I love Bryan Cranston so much, but
yeah, that's fair. He's phenomenal in it. And in everything.
Yes. And you have a book club as well?
Oh, yeah. That also came about during lockdown and the pandemic. Me and 2 other actor friends, me and one of the girls share the same manager. So we knew each other through our manager and followed each other on Instagram. And while we were like in quarantine lockdown, I was sharing a lot of books that I was reading on my Instagram stories. And she messaged me and she was like, hey, I know we've never met in real life, but we have the same taste in books. And I have another actor friend who also has the same taste in books as the 2 of us. We should start like a Zoom book club. And I was very like apprehensive about it at first because I was like, I don't know either of these people. I don't want to like commit to a thing if it turns out that we're going to have like a terrible time chatting with each other. But it turned out that we like had the best time. And yeah, now if you want to follow our book club, it's called Actors Who Book on Instagram. We mostly read thrillers and mysteries, but we're trying to do a better job of like branching out into things that aren't just about like a husband gaslighting his wife.
There's a place for that though.
Yeah. There's something very just fun about losing yourself in that insanity when everything around us is so crazy anyway.
Oh, totally. No, I think escapism has found a whole new place to kind of settle and live with us in terms of the media that people are consuming these days.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I find myself, we laugh about the titles of the books because so many of them are like, The Wife Upstairs, The Wife in the Kitchen, His Wife, like The Wife's Lies, and they all start to blend together, but they're all just like so much fun while you're losing yourself in the 300 pages of them.
Right. And it's probably easier to consume a book like that versus if you were reading like War and Peace or
Sure.
I don't know. I just pulled, a proto version of a big hefty book.
Yes. Yeah. And our book club also is very non-traditional in that like we really would like to be better about picking a book for the month of January and being like, hey, friends, if you want to read this book with us, read this book with us. And maybe by the time people are listening to this, we'll have gotten our acts together and like properly picked a book. But because it's only 3 of us and our lives are all like similarly busy, we understand that like auditions come up or one of the girls in our book club just had a baby. So like she's very preoccupied with with being a new mom. We mostly have like a running list of books that we're all trying to read roughly around the same time, so that when we do get together to chat, we can be like, okay, here are 5 books we've all read in the last month or 2 months, and let's get into them.
No, that's great. And I think having that community is so nice. I always joke because I'm not nearly as avid a reader as I wish I was. But I watch TV like a champ.
Oh, same.
And I've always said, like, I'd love to start a TV equivalent of a book club, just to like get together with people and to be like, okay, by the next time we see each other, we're going to all binge the first season of, I don't know, Malcolm in the Middle. We'll stay on Bryan Cranston for a sec. And then just get together every month or two and talk about how much we loved the next season of a thing.
That sounds so much. I would be so down to virtually join that with you, because
Perfect.
Yeah, I feel like I have like my book club friends and actor friends who are very tuned into what is on TV and like watch as much TV as me. But sometimes I feel like with my friends from back home, I'm from the East Coast, and not everyone that I grew up with watches as much TV as I do. Sometimes I feel like I'm like a walking like advertisement for HBO Max, just like listing off 10 shows that everyone needs to watch.
I know you go by Samantha. Do you prefer that as opposed to Sam being abbreviated ever? I just don't want
to. I'm totally good either way.
Okay. So being Cameron, I, for a long, long time, did not want people calling me Cam, especially like growing up in elementary school. I said on my first day at pre-K, like orientation, where you kind of sign in and you'd fill out some little quizzes so they could sort you in the right group. And I started writing my name out C-A-M, and the teacher came up and said like, oh, hey, Cam, it's nice to meet you. And I looked up at her and I was like, my name's Cameron, not Cam. I don't know how to spell my full name. That's why I'm here.
Oh my God, that's amazing. That's incredible.
And of course that changed when like a couple years later I had a teacher who I had a major crush on, and she was like, oh, can I call you Cam? And I was like, yeah, that's fine.
Please call me anything you want.
Exactly.
I can relate very strongly because I hated nicknames growing up. I was only Samantha. God forbid you call me Sam or Sammy. I was not having any of it. And then got to college and people started calling me Sam. And I don't know if it was just like a new environment, totally new people. I was like, actually, yeah, I'm okay being Sam. Like, I'll be Sam here.
Yeah.
And now with people I'm close to, I'm mostly Sam. Like professionally, I always introduce myself as Samantha. But my dad is so bummed because he's like, well, I always wanted to call you Sam growing up. And now I can't because it's weird. Like, now it's too late. Now you're just Samantha.
Yeah, no, I know how that goes. And it's also, I don't know if you ever experienced this. Like, I kind of get a vibe from people. Like sometimes I'll meet someone and they'll refer to me as like Cameron. And I'm like, oh, I don't like that from you. Or vice versa. Like
Yes.
There's something about the intentionality and just sometimes the way they say it is just like, oh, I don't like that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that as well. Sometimes I feel like I'm usually always fine if someone calls me Sam or Samantha. But oftentimes when I've just met someone and they have not had a chance for me to be like, hey, like you can call me Sam, and they just start calling me Sam, I'm still like, I don't know that you needed to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That wasn't
you haven't
for
earned
you.
it yet.
Yeah. Let me say it first.
Yeah, exactly. So Samantha,
Yes.
weird question. What's a physical possession that you've had the longest?
Oh, I don't know if I've had this the longest, but it is the first thing that popped into my head, and I've had it for a very long time. I have a teddy bear named Bear Bear that I've had since I was 6, and he's been on many an adventure with me. I used to be very embarrassed that his name has always been Bear Bear, and I would bring him to like sleepovers and stuff growing up. And I remember thinking like, oh, no one can know that I've named this teddy bear Bear Bear. Like, how dumb am I? So I would randomly call him. Like, people would a sleepover be like, oh, what's your teddy bear's name? I'd be like, Chocolate. as if that's in any way a more interesting or better name for a teddy bear. But for some reason, that was my cover name for a while. But yeah, he's made the move to Los Angeles with me. He's just in the other room.
I love that. And isn't it's so indicative of like the way that a kid just instinctively knows that there might be something that they may get made fun of in just like such a lousy way, like that you would feel at all embarrassed that like, oh, right. I need to change the name of my stuffed toy.
Yeah, of like my favorite thing that makes me feel like at peace and like I can fall asleep at night. But, someone else might think it's silly, so here we go. It's got a different name.
I suppose it's better than the alternative of not wanting to bring them with you at all to a sleepover for fear of being teased.
I am impressed with myself looking back that I was like, no, I'm bringing this teddy bear. That's okay. I did bring him. I remember this whole experience was wild. When I was in 3rd grade, they took a bunch of us on a school camping trip, and 8-year-olds should not have been taken on this. Like, they wanted us to go spelunking. Like, we were supposed to literally be 8 years old going through caves. A whole separate story. That part did not go well for me. But I brought Bear Bear with me on this camping trip. And in hindsight, he probably did not need to make the trip to, like, the mountains of Virginia with me. He could have stayed at home for that one.
Oh, gosh. Sorry. I come up from a family of teachers, and just thinking about the logistics of a camping trip like that with even like 2 or 3 8-year-olds, let alone a class of them, is frightening. It
was really an insane thing that they had us do looking back. And also I'm not an outdoorsy person. Like, I like going to the beach. I like going on like an LA version of a hike, which is just sort of like a road that's been covered in dirt a little bit. And, you know, you can chat with your friend the whole time and
maybe you don't have cell
afterwards.
Reception.
Yeah, exactly. But they had us spelunking. They had us do like a rock wall, which I'm sure is most kids' like dream to get to go do. But I just wanted no part in any of this weekend. I was probably like the grumpiest, least fun little 8-year-old on that trip. I remember it was the first time I tried taquitos, though, which I still love. So that part was a win.
Something good came out of it.
Yeah.
And the fact that Bear Bear survived.
Yes. He did. Definitely needed him that weekend.
So are you aware of phrases you say or cadences you use for words that you're actually just mimicking a movie or a TV show that you saw and have a fondness for?
I'm sure I have so many that I use. I can think most recently, I oftentimes will only notice I've started doing something because my brother will call me out on it, which is like a very younger brother thing to do.
Yeah.
Recently, he's noticed that I have adapted a lot of Alexis Rose mannerisms from Schitt's Creek, which probably isn't a great thing, but here we are.
It's an excellent show. There's no reason. Well, there's some reason, but
yeah, she's maybe not like the role model for speech patterns that sound particularly intelligent, but she's hilarious. So
yeah. I'm always amazed when I'll like watch an old. It could be a holiday movie or like just an old Disney movie or something, and I'll hear a word or two said, and I'm just like, oh, is that why I say whomever instead of this, or is that why I say it in that way? Is just really, it's wild what you can pick up on.
Oh, 100%. And speaking of my brother, again, there are so many times where I'm always fascinated by the way that siblings. Do you have siblings, or are you an only child?
No, I have a younger sister. She's 3.5 years younger than me.
Okay, so let me know if you relate to this as well. But I just always think it's so fascinating the way that siblings that like have grown up near an age to each other, like my brother's 1.5 years younger than me, have like their own set of references and language with which they communicate, and like only my brother and I sometimes get each other's references and the ways that we speak. Like, he called me recently, and I wish I could remember exactly what quote he was saying, but it was like 2 words that were from probably some like Disney show that we watched growing up. And he was like, these 2 words said exactly like this. What is this from? And I'm like, I will call you back when I remember it, because I'm sure I will, because we share all of the same like reference points.
Absolutely. And right down to, and you've probably had a similar thing where like, if a really like prominent, well-respected celebrity has passed away, you know, I'm trying to think of someone who's left us, where it's like, you know, they've won Oscars or they've EGOTed or they've done this, that, or the other thing. And, you know, your parents go like, oh, they won 3 Academy Awards for, you know, these movies. And then you look up at IMDb and you turn to your sibling and you're like, oh no, they were in Halloween Town. Or
Exactly. We had that recently with Larry David, who's obviously famous for a million of his own things. And my brother goes, oh yeah, he was in Hannah Montana. It's like, I'm sure he's not thrilled that that's the credit you are remembering him from. But he was, and his daughter was too.
And you're like, he was in an episode. I was in an episode of his show.
Right,
like,
right,
how don't
right.
you know? Another weird question. What's the first time you remember getting caught in a lie?
Okay. Again, not sure if this is like exactly the answer, but this is the first thing that popped into my head. It is the only time I have ever cheated in school at anything. I am such a rule follower that this has haunted me to this day. In 4th grade, we had a spelling test, and I generally did very well in school. Like, I did pretty well in high school, but like in middle school, when kids were like, that was their personality, I was very proud to like get A's on spelling tests and the multiplication charts and whatever. And we got our spelling tests back, and I'd gotten one word wrong. One word should not have bothered me. One word wrong on this whole test. And I just remember like crossing, I guess it was in pencil, erasing it and like fixing the word and going back to my teacher and being like, no, I spelled it right. Look, like you made a mistake. And I am positive that she knew that I had just done that. And she knew what kind of child I was. And she was like, okay, like I'll adjust the point, knowing that like that experience was enough to deter me from ever doing that again. Like, to this day, I am feeling so much shame and guilt over that moment.
I could feel it too. Like, we're on different coasts right now, and I'm like, oh, I'm feeling your anxiety from
right?
As a 4th grader. Oh,
yeah.
Gosh. Yeah, I really love some of the answers that I get when I ask this question to people, and it's really you got to think about like what the adults knew and how much would they let you kind of skate by on things versus like in this situation where, you know, they clearly knew what was going on.
Oh yeah. She knew 100%.
Yeah. And I suppose the benefit there is that you were the kind of student who would not take that as a triumphant moment, so that it stays with you, and that you, you know, wouldn't have turned to a life of deception and deceivery.
Exactly. Yeah. She could definitely tell. I was the kid who, really, this teacher was amazing. I look back and I'm so grateful to her, Miss Costi, for like so many moments in her class. But in 4th grade over spring break, my family went to New York to visit. My great grandmother lives in New York, and we saw Wicked, and it had just come out on Broadway. Like, it was the original cast still. And I was in 4th grade, so like my musical theater obsession that blossomed later had not been quite born yet. I enjoyed musicals, but it was still like a small passion, if that. And I saw Wicked, and it just changed my whole life. Like seeing Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth and sitting like way in the balcony, but just experiencing Wicked on Broadway was like very much a life-affirming moment for me. And I came back to school after spring break, and I must have asked my teacher probably so many times for her to even like allow it. But there was one specific day where during, I don't remember, maybe like we were drawing something that didn't require a ton of focus, she let me play the soundtrack to Wicked for the whole class. And I truly wonder what like all the other kids were thinking, that they were like, okay, Samantha's playing a musical, interesting. like what was happening through everyone else's brain. But just like, what a nice teacher that she saw something I was so excited about. And she was like, we will make time for this. Like, I will make time for this child to experience and share this joy with other people.
One more weird question. Do you remember a time when you found just the right book for just the right moment of life that you were in at the time?
That is a great question, to which I do not have an answer off the top of my head.
That's okay.
But that is a really good question. Not the answer to that question, but I do remember the first time that I like truly connected with a book that I was reading because of Winn-Dixie. I'm not sure if you've read it, or they did a movie also.
I'm aware of it. I think my sister had to read it, and we went all together to the theater to go see the movie. I don't know how true an adaptation it was or not, but I'm familiar with the story.
Yeah, it was. I think it was a pretty good movie, but I just remember it was the first time that a book that I read to myself, probably ever, like, made me cry. Not the first book I'd ever read to myself, but the first time a book at all had made me cry. Like, the experience of reading it was so intense emotionally. But yeah, I can picture exactly where I was in my childhood bedroom, just like all of a sudden crying over this dog.
I think about, I couldn't tell you the first time I was like truly, truly affected by a book, but I remember that feeling of, just being like finally understanding what it's like to like be in the pages of the thing. And to really have a full affecting experience, as opposed to just like having the words end up in your brain.
Yes, 100%. And I definitely felt like, now I read so much. It's one of the ways that I unwind, and I read almost every night before I go to sleep. Like, it's just one of the things that brings me the most joy at this point in my life. But there were a huge chunk of years where I stopped enjoying it. And lots of people, like, when I post about books I'm reading, will say like, oh, I have such a hard time like getting into it, or I feel like, not shame, but sometimes people feel self-conscious about not liking reading or having a hard time with it. And I just feel like it's one of those things that there should be no pressure about, like, it, unless you're reading deliberately like academic work or something to like grow your mind or your worldview. Unless you've like set out with that goal, it really should be an enjoyable experience. So I don't think it benefits anyone to put like pressure on themselves to decide that they like reading or like want to be reading lots of books. I feel like it can come and go as you need it and want it.
Absolutely. And I think for a lot of people, they associate an activity with a place. So like if you're sitting, for instance, in your living room where you normally do nothing but watch television or, scroll through your phone, if you sit there with the book trying to, read the new David Sedaris, like, it's not necessarily going to happen for you, versus like, that's what I love about going on vacation is that, I bring a book or two and just absorb it because you're just in a completely new headspace there.
Completely agree. Yeah, there's really no better feeling than reading on vacation. Like being at the beach in a hammock or something and just like losing hours to a book.
Yeah, the water in that case is just like completely for show.
Yeah.
It's just the white noise that you needed to get the real vacation done.
Exactly. You could be anywhere, but you really need to be at the beach to get that reading done.
So, Sam, this is where we kind of get into the questions where I ask people, how are they really? I know you went to prep school on the East Coast. Where was that, and how was that experience for you?
I went to school. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, and I went to school in Northern Virginia. I am so immensely grateful for the education that I received there. I went to the Potomac School. Amazing education, especially the English department. And I'm really grateful for the opportunities I got as a young actor, because the head of the theater department there the head of it. He was the whole, it was one teacher, but he was very kind, and he obviously saw whether it was talent or drive or just like a child who really enjoyed this being their outlet. Like, I was able to be in all the shows. I was able to be in chorus as well. Like, there are so many things that helped me develop as the person I am that I'm really grateful for. It was also an environment that, looking back, created an insane amount of stress in literal children. Like, the whole DC area, I think, sort of does that. It's a community of very tightly wound individuals. But I remember one of my very good friends saying to me when we were applying for colleges, I knew I wanted to go study theater in college, and that was like a rare thing coming out of a Washington, D.C. prep school. We were like in one of those all senior meetings where they were talking to us about college, and she says, like, just to me, she's like, we all want the same thing. We all want to go to a top 25 university. And I was like, ooh, I don't want that. And also, that's so stressful. That's so, like, this is an immense amount of stress to put on children.
And for what, right?
And
like,
for what?
If they don't have the program that is going to be nutritious to you, like, what does it matter if it's on a,
Truly.
A BuzzFeed list?
No, for sure. And I think I know so many people who did go to the school they thought they were supposed to go to and had really tough experiences. One, because maybe they were people who were like known for being, just to use yearbook as an example, like the yearbook editor. But suddenly now they're at a school where everyone was the yearbook editor, and that doesn't make them special anymore. Like, suddenly they're around people who were all the top of their class in math, and that's not their thing anymore. And not just that, but like, I'm sure so many people in general, but like so many people I know were so burnt out from the experience of putting that much pressure on themselves in high school that they got to college and were like, I might actually be depressed. Like, I might not actually be able to function, like, at all.
Yeah, there's only so much time you can kind of coast on anxiety before it comes back to bite you, and it's just like, oh, I need a therapist.
Yeah. And I cannot recommend to people getting one enough. I love my therapist.
Was it associated with like a religious group or anything, or was it just a private?
Non-religious, just a private school. To be totally honest, I am in the process of trying, maybe by the time this comes out, I'll be further along in my process, but I really want to make a TV show about the experience of DC private schools, because they are such a beast. Like, beyond what you picture with like Gossip Girl, where like private school in general, like specifically being around the children of politicians and like the children of people who are just like casually running our country, creates a very, very strange environment for kids to grow up in.
I can't even imagine that.
Looking back, like, I don't think that for the most part, it didn't give those children like a sense of ego in the way they interacted at school. Mm-hmm. If anything, I think it may have had the opposite effect, where like there was a not sense of insecurity, but like I had kids in my class who literally had Secret Service that sat outside our door. Like, they had their own security, and I don't think that that's especially healthy for a child to like carry that much stress with them. The children that had that have all turned out great and are lovely people. I am not trying to say that they're not.
Sure.
But like,
no, of course, but it's a different.
Yeah, I think that being 13 years old was so stressful anyway. To also feel like I am in some sort of danger, that I have like a security team following me at all times. It's got to be just like a weird extra thing you're always carrying.
Right. And yeah, try having that in your head while you're also sitting in a room trying to take an SAT.
Yeah.
I would love to see that show as someone who grew up around teachers. And I love a good school show. Anything that revolves around the inner workings of students and faculty and what their home lives are and just what that melting pot is. I would watch the hell out of that.
That's how I feel about the idea also. Like, people have asked me in the past, like, what show do you want to be on? And I always come back to this idea that like I'm slowly aging out of being one of the students on it, but just like the world of students in a high school or college like is so fascinating and like rife for drama and conflict, and I always am down to watch a show like that.
Well, and you know, were you to age out of that range where you were able to play a student, you could just play like the fresh-faced out of college, you know, English teacher.
Exactly.
You know, still thinks they can make a difference.
Oh, I will be slotting myself into this show somewhere.
For sure. So do you feel like that because of the prep school experience that there were things that you missed out on? Like that there were things in the real world that you were not prepped for, so to speak?
100%. Yes. I went to college at the University of Miami in Florida, and like, granted, that school has a lot of people coming from similar backgrounds to mine, but also it's an international school. There are so many people from so many different walks of life that end up there. I just remember like starting college and being like, oh, my high school experience was weird and not relatable. And I would tell like a story and my new friends would be like, what kind of school did you go to? Like, what are you talking about? We didn't do that. I had my advisor senior year, like we got split up into different advisory groups. And I remember right before we graduated, he was like, none of you all are prepared for life. None of you know how to change a tire. None of you know how to like file your taxes. Like, you're all going to be so lost. There should have been a class on this. And it's like, I would have really appreciated a class on this. The number of times I call my parents, like still to this day, to be like, how do I do this very basic thing that I would have loved for one of you to tell me how to do years ago. But here we are. I'm calling you now. Yeah, for sure. We should have learned better basic human life skills.
And I think because I've had similar moments where I go to my parents and it's just like, wait, you don't know that? Like someone, we spent all this money for high school and college and grade school, and like no one along the way taught you how to X, Y, or Z. Truly.
A perfect example, I was on a long drive last fall, and the coolant in my car was low, and I had to stop at a gas station and purchase coolant to fix my car so I could keep driving on this road trip. And I call my dad because, of course, and he's like, Samantha, how do you not know how to do this? Like, you put the hood up, you refill why don't you know how to do this? I'm like, if you didn't show me how to do this, why on earth do you think I would know how to do this? This is not intuitive.
No, just finding the latch to open up the hood is a struggle from car to car.
That was such an ordeal. Yeah.
And then you don't even know what you're cooling off with the coolant. Like,
no, in this particular issue, the coolant level, there was a leak. So like, I thought I was so proud of myself. I was like, I did it. I refilled the coolant and off we go. And then like 20 minutes later, it was like, coolant level low again. I was like, I need to get better at this because I do not know how to do anything with my car.
I can't tell you how much I relate to that. So you mentioned already, being very close with your acting teachers in school and finding theater. What itch did that scratch for you? Like the acting and the writing and performing?
I think in school, I would not describe myself as shy anymore, but I certainly felt very shy from like middle school through high school, I guess, looking back, and getting to perform opened up like this world where I felt so much more confident, where it wasn't me making weird choices, like it was me as a character. So I got to just like, I just really enjoyed being someone that wasn't me, which sounds sad, but I never have felt it as a like sadness. I like being me also, but I loved getting to explore and be all these other not more interesting, but just like totally different people. And yeah, I think that the confidence I found on stage I'm grateful, like bled into my actual life. I don't feel nervous to speak to people anymore like I used to, but that also probably just comes with not being in high school anymore.
Yes. And I think to a certain degree, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I think it's Andy Richter on his podcast who just will repeatedly say like, acting's just lying. And so like, I think about all of the different masks that I had to put on as a kid, like trying to squanch down the puppetry thing so that people didn't make fun of me, or trying to posture myself with this group of people so I could fit in. And like, you almost are putting in the time as an actor without realizing that you're doing it. So then when you do find a stage and you're cast in the right role, or just around other actors and performers, it's like, oh, okay, this is what I've been doing all of this for.
100%. I will say you would have fit in great in my theater department again, I say department, it was so small, but my theater teacher loved puppets, like desperately wished that he had students who were capable of using puppets so that he could have put on a show exclusively with puppets. We'll go back in time. Great. You'll go to high school with me.
Perfect. And and we could have it out over, whether Wicked should have won the Tony versus Avenue Q.
Mm-hmm. Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I think Avenue Q is a better show.
Yeah, it's apples and oranges, right? Or more so apples and like Mercedes. Like it's just
love them both.
So when you're making your TikTok videos, what are you looking for in terms of deciding what comedian you're going to lip sync to, specifically what set of theirs you're going to listen to? Like what's that process, and what do you think you're trying to express about yourself in choosing something that John Mulaney may have said?
So initially when it started out, it was, I should look back and see what the first Mulaney lip sync I did was, because I feel like that would be the answer to the question. I feel like one of the early ones was about college, and we were in lockdown, and I was probably wearing a college t-shirt, and I was like, oh, okay, like this makes me think of that. And
you just gotten a letter from the advancement department saying,
exactly.
Can you give us money? Exactly.
Always. I have them saved in my phone as wants money. So I know.
Perfect.
But my Gen Z cousin had told me that like the first lip sync video I did, which was to Mean Girls audio, which was also inspired by clothing. I have one of those velour tracksuits that Amy Poehler wears in it. And I was like, well, I have the costume. Let's do the lip sync. He was like, that was cool. You should do more of those. And I was like, oh, okay, well, if that was cool with like the kids, I'll keep going. But I think now I'm looking for audio that, one, I think is funny. Two, I don't mind my face being on. Like, I don't see the person saying the material is problematic enough that I don't want my face to be attached to their presence. Right. And I think that I can, like, bring something to it. Like, I'm not just moving my mouth to their words.
Yeah, you're illustrating it in a little way. You create characters within the bit. If the person telling the stand-up is at a grocery store, you'll take on and they're telling a story about a time with a clerk. You'll be both the clerk and that comedian. Yeah. And the comedian telling the story.
Now, especially, like, as I've already exhausted a lot of material, I'm much more focused on finding stuff like that where I can find 2 to 3 characters in the stand-up set that I can bring the bit to life in a way that's new. I also try to... I think most of the people that follow me are not children, but I do have enough people who have told me, like, my daughter or son loves your facial expressions, that I try not to find material that's, like, full of curse words.
So no Lewis Black in your repertoire.
I know, it's such a bummer, because him and George Carlin, whom I also love and get lots of requests for, I'm like, I wish I could find material that he was a little bit cleaner in. Because then I would do it.
I'd love to know just the process of you making those, because I, as a human person, have tried doing lip sync videos, and I cannot make it look natural, like even a little bit, which is great because I'm a puppeteer, so I could just do it that way, and I'm much more proficient at that. But did that just come natural, or was that something you had to work on?
I weirdly think it was something that was natural, which is, I'm glad I'm living in the time I am, because I don't think that would have been a useful skill 3 years ago. But right. I listen to, so the way that I make them is I film and edit within the TikTok app, which makes it easy to break it down by line. So I will, if you watch my videos, you know that like there are cuts in them, usually between thoughts or lines. So I will set the little like timer that it's going to film.
It's going to record up to this word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll do it like, sometimes I get it on the first try, but usually not. Usually I am doing at least 10 takes of it to get a version that I am happy with. So I'll film it, get a version I'm happy with, watch it, make sure it's good, and then move on and do the same thing again with the next one. So I'm constantly watching the video all the way through to make sure that it's like there's a continuity in like the storytelling of the TikTok that I'm happy with. I have yet to find a way to lip sync successfully off the app. I think that would be my next venture, figuring out like a way that I am not reliant solely on that app for all the content I create, but that's what works now.
I am so impressed that you do it all in app. I just figured that you were editing like in literally anything else, just because of how like clean and consistent it is. I just thought you were doing like one pass at this view in this costume and then take it all down and, move the phone to another part of your, your room or whatever and put on the glasses. And that's really impressive. I'm all the more amazed by the stuff that you put out.
Oh, that's really nice. Thank you. I'm trying to do more videos using my actual voice, like little sketches that I'm writing. And those I do not film in app for the most part. I film those and edit those separately. But for the lip sync element of it, I rely very heavily on TikTok.
Well, and that transitions really well into the next thing I wanted to ask you about was like how in any way has doing those bits and really dissecting that stand-up and that writing inform your own writing and acting skills? That's
such a good question. I get asked a lot from people like, do you do your own stand-up? And that's not something I've ever done, nor is it something I'm particularly interested in attempting. Like, that's such a specific skill set and requires so much practice and a level of confidence in getting up to try material that I do not possess. But I do think that, like, watching so many people tell jokes and, like, hearing so many people tell jokes is good practice in just, like, reminding myself what joke structures are successful. And I don't know that I'm necessarily there yet with my original stuff. Like, it only rarely performs as well as the lip syncs, but it has given me a lot of inspiration to, like, continue evolving and growing those skills.
Yeah, fighting the algorithm is like just a complete pain in the rear. Like,
truly.
I love doing the Kermit videos that I do because it's probably the only place I'll ever be able to perform Kermit and have like an audience in that way. But it's also like it's a blessing and a curse because he's not my character. There are so many other things that I'd prefer to do on that platform. But anytime you veer off of what got you the hits in the first place, the numbers just come crashing down.
I so relate because mostly the thing that I'm so grateful for is that I am able to bring joy, and I know you can relate to this, like that I'm able to make someone smile. That is such a win. It makes me so happy that people enjoy the content I'm creating, lip sync or not. But it is so frustrating when I make a video that I am honestly proud of, like having nothing to do with another comedian. Like, I have written and filmed something that I think is so funny, and other people in my life that are around me I've texted it to them and they've been like, this is good. Like, other people should have seen this.
And you have 100% ownership over it.
100%. And then no one sees it on TikTok because the algorithm says, oh, but it's not John Mulaney's voice, so no, skip. And I get so many people commenting like, you should do your own stuff, or what does your real voice sound like? And I get it because the algorithm is serving them the other stuff.
Right.
But I have so many videos with my own voice.
Yeah. You should make your own stuff. You should watch my stuff that I've already made. Thank you.
Yeah. Like, I can only say that so many times before I seem so rude. I try to be like, oh, I have a highlight reel with all my original stuff. You can click on it.
Mm-hmm. I have different playlists where you could see the originals. Yeah, that's really frustrating. But going back to like the writing of your own stuff, I think, yeah, even if you're not doing stand up, the sketches that you write are so much fun. And I would imagine like all of it's storytelling, right? So whether or not you're doing it as a monologue as a stand-up comedian, or if you're just there, creating your own, 3-person sketch, but you're by yourself, like it's all getting to the punchline, telling a good story, and, making people's day with what you're presenting to them.
Totally. Yeah, it's interesting too, creating with TikTok in mind, because there's an element of needing to like hook people immediately, because that's how more people get to see the video if people watch for long enough. And, I've written like scripts that I want to film before where I like the little beginning bantery bit, but I'm like, I know this isn't going to keep people's attention long enough to get to the main point of the joke, which is the reason people will share it. And I don't, it's like, it's weird having to create something that can be digested in 30 seconds.
Right. And you have a second to capture them before they're on to the next thing.
Yeah, exactly. That in particular is something I think I'm working on.
Yeah. Well, and it's not even conducive to anything other than TikTok videos, right? Like nowhere else, you would never open a book and you need to, in the first 3 words, be like, oh, this is it. This is the next best thing ever.
Right. Everything else you can sort of warm up into it. You get to world build a little. TikTok is like, it needs to be funny right now, or everyone is going to just swipe on by.
Well, you're putting in the time and you're creating good stuff. So hopefully,
thank you.
I'm sure eventually it will catch on in the way that your Mulaney stuff and everybody else does as well.
Oh, thanks.
I did want to talk to you about just social media for you in general, because the TikTok is one thing, but I follow you on Instagram as well, and just your feed in total, taking it all in at once, is like a work of art. Like you've clearly got like a color palette in mind. Like everything is just bright and fun, and you get a sense immediately of who you are. Thank
you so much.
Is all of this? Oh, of course. No, and I work in marketing and social media. So like I love when people, actually think about not just what they're posting, but the larger context of like, if they land on the feed for the first time, like what does that visual do versus just seeing it within everything else as they're scrolling through in the newsfeed. But how much of that is stuff that you enjoy creating versus, as an actor, how much of it does it need to be like a living resume for you and making sure that people, are considering you for things?
I've been on Instagram much longer than I've been on TikTok, and I've been enjoying using Instagram for years. I used to use it like solely as a food blog. I would try different restaurants around Los Angeles and was really just posting like restaurant experiences that I'd had or things that I'd baked at home. And as the people who follow me have come from TikTok, I'm grateful. They're more interested in me than what I ate. And so the things that I'm sharing have evolved in a way that's more still so down to share what I've just eaten. Like, you'll still see so much food on my page, but it's more sort of like a well-rounded picture, I guess, of my life and things that I enjoy and my day-to-day. And in terms of like it existing as a resume, I'm less concerned with that and more that like if someone's thinking of hiring me and they go to my Instagram, like, is this a person I would be down to spend like 3 weeks with? Does she like present to the world as a decent human? I hope the answer is yes. I do try to like share, I always share like, here's a thing that I'm working on, or here's something that you can watch me in. but I have a lot of actor friends, and not friends, just like people I've seen online who, it's like a whole thing with actors like sharing their self-tape bloopers. And I don't think it's actually that much fun for other people to watch.
No.
Like, it's not as quirky as anyone thinks it is.
I'll interject real quick and just say, in the early Pixar movies that came out, is definitely in the first two Toy Stories, A Bug's Life and Monsters, Inc. I'm not sure how much longer they did it, but they'd have a blooper reel at the end of the movies as if, like, the characters in that were actually being filmed. And even as a kid, even as a, 6 years old or however old I was when those movies were coming out, I called bullshit. I was like, those are animated characters. They did not screw up. They made animators, work on weekends or work on Christmas so that they could, add this little thing. And like, sure, it's funny, but there is a like truly performative aspect of it that is like not authentic at all. And sorry, you saying that about actors posting their bloopers. It's like, okay, how much of this was even...
How much of this was genuinely you, like, making a little mistake versus you being like, oh my God, this was funny.
They're going to see how great I am at improving and responding just to my own little hiccups. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I cannot watch one more person post a self-tape of them just, like, slating, saying their name. It's like, it's just not funny for anyone else.
It feels like work.
Yeah. But that's actually a good segue to that. My experience with Instagram used to be like truly a for fun hobby, like a little creative outlet. And it is, I am reframing the way that I think about it as this is part of my job. This is work. Like, it's okay if I'm not having as much fun as I used to, because it is a source of income now. It is a opportunity for people to find me who might want to work with me. Yeah, it's okay that it's not the same source of joy it used to be. I wish it was. It's more stressful now, but like, it's work, and I will think about it as work, and I will treat it as work. And that's where I'm at mentally in order to like slog through social media.
Sure. So you've kind of already answered this, but I'd love if you have anything that you want to add to it. If Mr. Hollywood said, hey, Samantha, here is a blank check to make whatever you want or to do whatever you want to do, like, what's the dream for you in terms of where you'd like to be able to be, what kind of work you'd like to be creating?
The vaguest version of the dream that I have is to just be the lead on a long-running sitcom, just to know that I get to go to work every day to make something with people whom I enjoy. Honestly, being on a soap opera sounds great to me because it's the exact same thing. You get to go to work every day, and that's what I'm craving so much right now. I would love to wake up every morning knowing I get to go do the thing I love in this specific place, and I don't have to be like constantly hustling as much as I feel like I have to be right now. But yeah, I'd also love to get that DC private school TV show made.
I'd love that you said a show that, isn't just popular, but has just has longevity, because I think you end up finding in those cases, like, the cameraman's been there for 30 years, or like the sound guy knows everybody's name, and it feels more like a family, and it's its own weird version of an office job where everyone's, a lifer.
100%. And I've been really lucky to work on a lot of cool things, but I haven't been part of something for like an extended period of time. And I really look forward to being able to do that, because there's so much joy in like the jitters of being there for a couple days and like, getting to soak it all up. But I really look forward to being like, these are my coworkers and I see them every day and we know each other well. And yeah, exactly. Like the crew, I would love to like have closer relationships with just like every person working on something.
And not having to worry about the stress of, is this thing that we're making, I should say, knowing that the thing that you're making is going to be on TV or it's going to be watched, versus...
I can speak to, I'm, by the time this comes out, the show will have come out. I'm in, unless I get cut from it, which is why I say this, I don't know that I'm going to make the final cut of these episodes, but I am in an HBO Max show that's coming out in November called The Sex Lives of College Girls. And it was so cool to get to be part of it, knowing it had been like ordered to series and like people. When this comes out, I hope that you have seen me in it. I hope I wasn't cut from it, but like, I look forward to being in something with the confidence of being like, I'm gonna fully be in the final version.
As we start to wrap up, I love asking people, how can we help? And in just the spirit of being supportive towards you as you continue on in the world, what's something that you think people take for granted about your work? Like something that they think is easy about the job that is actually like really challenging or really time consuming, or you just don't like doing?
I spend so many hours trying to find audio that I hope people will enjoy. So just like that little bit of extra time that goes into not just doing like whatever the trending audio is, I hope people appreciate. But also, I don't know how to exactly word this, but like it makes me so happy to know that I am making someone's day better. But I think that a lot of times I project like a very, and I do it on purpose, I project like a happy persona online, because while it is nice to see that people are like full humans with a full spectrum of emotions, it's not super fun to see someone be like really sad, unless that is why you're following them, which is its own thing. Like, I like putting out positive content. That is a contribution I like making to the internet. But I myself feel anxious a lot, feel sad a lot. I'm a human being living through the pandemic with like a whole set of personal stuff going on, like we all are. Just because you see someone online who's like curated a persona of positivity, it does not mean that that's how they feel. And sometimes it's sort of frustrating to get comments from people, which I know they mean well, being like, how are you so happy all the time? And it's like, right. You are watching 45 seconds of my life. I purposely did this.
And part of it is I'm saying it so I could go back and watch it and hear it myself.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You're like the king of that. You make such like beautiful, positive content. And I imagine that's not how you feel 100% of the time. So for someone to like project that on you is sometimes sort of exhausting.
Yeah. And just sometimes if you're really in a funk, like being able to produce the content can be, I imagine, challenging, of just like, how am I going to do this with it seeming even remotely authentic? Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and I guess that's where your acting skills come in.
Yeah. Thanks. I had my comments for people I'm not friends with turned off for a while this past year, because I was just like dealing with a bunch of personal stuff and I could not properly process the anxiety that it gave me to deal with total randoms weighing in on like every single thing I was doing. And my comments are back open and all is like good with that. I'm in a much better place in terms of processing that stuff and ignoring stuff. But yeah, like if creators' comments are turned off, it doesn't necessarily mean that like they're in some horrible like scandal. They might just like need to put up a barrier, a boundary in order to keep creating the content that you enjoy.
Yep, absolutely. And good on you for having thought critically enough of like, oh, I need this mental health break. You know, I'm just going to step away from this and being able to realize that versus maybe not, and getting so overwhelmed that you just turn off the account entirely.
Yeah, because that's not what I want to do. I have fun making the videos. I like knowing other people enjoy them. It's not beneficial for me work-wise to not create them anymore. But yeah, sometimes I don't need every single man on the internet to let me know what he thinks of the sweater I'm wearing. I don't know. Understood. Sometimes it's not helpful.
No, not at all. Your sweater is lovely, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
What's something in life that you wish people had more empathy about? Something that you think would just like help people be kinder to one another?
I think if people remembered more often that everyone is not thinking about them, that would be helpful. I know I've had like interactions with friends from high school who have expressed feeling, for whatever reason they decided to do this, like, let me know what they thought of me in high school and be like, what did you think of me? And I'm like, oh, I wasn't thinking about you. Like, I was very caught up in my own stuff.
I was busy thinking about me.
Yeah. And I think if we all just remembered that a little bit more, that like, no one's actually that caught up on what you wore to that dinner a month ago that you're still overthinking. Like, you can let that go. That doesn't need to hold space in your brain. And also, this whole year and a half has been a real reminder that while not everyone's thinking about you, you should probably think a bit more about like the general we in society, that like our actions have consequences. So like, don't get hung up on the petty stuff that everybody doesn't actually care about that you think is like the most important thing in the world. But maybe just like that the choices you're making on a bigger scale affect other people. So just like reconfiguring those priorities would be great.
And how can people learn more about you and all the work that you do?
They can follow me on Instagram at Samantha Dockser and TikTok also at Samantha Dockser. Those are the two places that I am primarily posting and sharing content. You can also always Google my name and IMDb in combination. And if you want to watch stuff that I've been in, that is a great way to find that.
And one last thing, your work is an endless inspiration to me, and I'm positive it is to so many others. I think you're already a star, and please never stop telling your story.
Thank you so much. I think the same about you. That was so nice. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
We did it. You came to the end of the first episode of This Should Have Been a Phone Call. Thanks so much to Samantha for stopping by and having this great conversation. It really felt like we were friends by the end of that. Don't forget, there are plenty of other episodes of the show out right now, and you could hear them by going to phonecallpod.com. You could listen to them right now. Please give us a follow at phonecallpod wherever you get your social media. And if you're feeling brave, I always appreciate a good review or comment over at Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. It helps the show grow, but it also keeps your ex from winning the breakup, so we'd all really appreciate that. I'll see you next time on This Should Have Been a Phone Call. Oh, and one more thing. I love you. You are enough. Keep going.